I'm going to rant a little bit about what Stipple is and what Stipple isn't, um, just in case anybody's interested, and it might give the testers a good idea of what kind of suggestions will be most useful. Um, I'm just going to kind of just go through some art while I talk, I guess. Maybe I should have made a slideshow. Um, so right now, what Stipple is it's basically just a toy for Android devices with the intention of making art for Instagram. That's basically how small the scope is right now. It's not a professional tool by any means. Uh, in the future, I'd love it to expand into Illustrator, Photoshop plugins, maybe something standalone for a desktop. And of course, I want to make something for iPhones. If anybody knows anybody, that sounds like a mountain to climb. Anyway, of course, I want to make all these things, but all of that is going to depend on the success of and the interest in the Android version itself. So, as I said, it's a toy. It lacks some of the basic things that you want in a drawing app, like a basic zoom function, or the ability to set your canvas size. But right now, it's good enough to post cool stuff on Instagram, and I think that the stuff I post on Instagram uh, at least shows that. If you're testing, you probably at least have a vague appreciation of the art that I've posted on Instagram. I'm trying to sound humble here. I think my art's pretty cool. Uh, anyway, uh, that said, you could potentially do something for print output if you have a high res device. I mean, if you have a device that's like 2400 inches or 2400 pixels long, uh, if you divide 24, like that's how big your output's going to be when you save an image out of Stipple. So if you divide 2400 by 300 with DPI, which is the standard print resolution, and that's 8 inches tall. I mean that's potentially something you could put on the wall. I mean, I have some stipple output on my wall. I'm a particular, let's say, I'm pretty particular about resolution. I don't like low res stuff. I don't like to print stuff out that looks unintentionally blurry. Uh, but if you upsize the images in Photoshop or probably a upsizing plugin or app, you can probably get adequate print results. Let's put it that way. That's about as high a claim as I'm going to make. Another thing is the controls. They might seem overwhelming. I'll be the first to admit I'm a confusing guy. I don't necessarily want the controls in it. I don't necessarily use a program the way that somebody else might use a program. I might not match what you expect, but I do ask that if you're testing this out, you at least attempt to learn the controls. There's I've made quite a few videos trying to explain the controls, and I think if you give it a shot, you'll understand why some things are a certain way, but also understand it's all a compromise. Interface is a monster of its own. I mean, when you're building an app, and this is a horrible excuse, but as I've said on some posts, like I'm a graphic designer by my background is graphic design. Mine it's not interface design. I can make icons, but making cool interfaces, that's a challenge of itself, and I'm trying to get better as at it as we go, but in an attempt to expedite the finished product, some of the interface is a little clunky, admittedly, and it's some of the buttons are ambiguous, and I often criticize Apple interface for hiding things behind buttons that you don't understand, or using weird gestures and commands that aren't actually present. And here I am making an app that does that same thing. But as we go, or as this app develops, and you guys are part of this, if you're listening to this, you're definitely helping me. As this progresses, I'll make the interface better, more usable. But the reason that you have a ton of control is you can tweak it. You can make everything in between. It's not like you pick one brush size and it's doing one brush size. You have the ability to control your min and your max and your dot size and your brush size. And you have this ability, and in a way, it's inspired by an effects pedal for a guitar that just has like five knobs on it, and those five knobs can create an array, like an infinite array of effects. Like this is the idea. It's a simple app. It's got simple rules, but with those simple rules, you can do some crazy stuff. Um, so I would say when you're testing this, don't get the idea that this is instant artwork. This is not a standalone. This isn't a filter app. This isn't Mirror Lab where you can just make just these crazy pieces of art just by touching a few buttons. I mean, this takes some time to get used to, and that's no criticism of Mirror Lab. I love Mirror Lab. Uh, this is a little harder to use now as opposed to Sketch or Procreate, where those are just art programs where one could argue, well, it's easy to draw with those programs, but I would argue it's hard to draw. It's hard to draw, period, right? Like, is a pencil easy to use? Well, yeah, a pencil's easy to use to draw a line, but to draw something that anybody's going to give a crap about, no, it's incredibly hard to draw with a pencil. Um, and I'd say that this is easier to draw with a pencil, but it might be more confusing to draw. Might be more confusing than a pencil. Um, so if it seems hard to use, then that's evidence that it is hard to use. I'd argue that friggin' YouTube's hard to use. So I gotta share a playlist. Gotta watch a video just to figure out how to share a playlist, right? Instagram's hard to use. Everything's hard to use. Anything that's worthwhile is hard to use. But that's no excuse for me not making the interface better. So I do welcome suggestions, but with the caveat that you try to appreciate what's there, what's existing there. I hope that you find it fun. I find it really fun. I've heard it compared to like that magnetic hair guy thing that you had when you were a toy with a pen. Uh, I think of it as like kind of like a spray paint. Like you're basically like holding up a stencil real quick and doing a spray paint. Um, it's pretty open ended, and I as I said, I hope you have fun with it. And thanks for watching.